And we're back. The final installment, the Argentine Prison Museum in Buenos Aires. We left off with this image of a prisoner in black and white striped uniform being restrained by leg irons. And what this suggests, at least to me, is that whereas the larger narration of the prison museum, of the history of penology in Argentina, seems to embrace a story of progressive modernization, this is a reminder that there is also the use of brute force in the restraint of prisoners. And I mention that because in the next series of images, we're going to see this juxtaposition of pre-modern and modern punishment and penology. This gallery here has its own storyline on the importance of work, labor, therapy. Those are the precise words that are used in the larger vocabulary of Argentine penology. And there are different facets of work therapy. Much like North America and Europe and elsewhere, their prisons and penology have incorporated aspects of the factory. The prison as a factory. We also have the prison as a farm. Now, in the United States, you can actually geographically and historically dissect those paradigms. Whereas the emergence of prisons in the 1830s, 40s, and 50s and beyond the Civil War were modeled after the factory, Southern prisons were still committed to the plantation, the factory, and the plantation, the farm. Foucault draws attention to this development in France, especially with respect to juveniles. And oftentimes juveniles are provided a regiment that is qualitatively different from those that are designed for adults. Oftentimes juveniles in France and the US and elsewhere are oftentimes removed from an urban environment and placed in a farm, rural setting. And Foucault, along the way of Durkheim, would recognize that this is also the use of purification, that the farm and rural settings provide a almost utopian, romantic form of purification. The factory, on the other hand, is really a modern manifestation of punishment. Let us continue, because we've got more in this final installment. A barber chair situated next to artworks that were handmade by prisoners. It's kind of a complicated part of the gallery. Let me see if I can untangle it. The barber chair seems to suggest that the Argentine prison system was still very much of a modern enterprise. So a barber chair in an Argentine prison was no different from a barber chair in a salon. But the artwork also speaks to creativity of prisoners. The barber chair also speaks to hygiene, good grooming. And that's also a very important part of transformation, of dealing with pollution, of transforming prisoners as so-called contaminated individuals to cleanse them and groom them and prepare them for re-entry into a society that also wants to be sanitized. Pollution. Contemplate that as we make a segue to more commentary on pollution and purification. You might say, well, yeah, that's what a basin does. It's an instrument for purification. This is actually a clausura, which makes reference to the closing ceremony that Mother Superior and the nuns would develop as a ritual for the women who are held at this institution, and before being released into the community, they would undergo another form of baptism with the clausura, this closing ritual. This was kind of concluding a particular chapter of transformation as the prisoner is being released from this secure environment to one of a larger society that, although civilized, would still have temptation, would still have vice, would still have criminal opportunities. And this is a symbolic ritual that prepares the woman prisoner to re-enter society and to be able to resist those temptations. Highly socio-religious. And we have more. This speaks also to the creativity of prisoners. All of these objects on display in what I would identify as a cabinet of curiosity, which I've mentioned in other episodes, puts on display these objects that are expressions of convict creativity. And some of them are socio-religious, as we can see here, images of Christ. We also see expressions of civic leadership and government in the form of San Martin, the liberation, if you will, of Argentina from the Spanish. We also see in this cabinet of curiosity weapons that are made by prisoners, adding to the element of danger inside convict society. But what really caught my eye in this display is this item here. Let me just pause and allow the audience to absorb, to gaze, to interpret this particular object. And I am confident that there are many people in the audience who are saying to themselves, or maybe to the person they're sitting next to as they watch this amazing episode, they're saying, yeah, that is a bong. That is a prisoner-made bong that speaks to a lot of symbolism. Escape. Getting high, intoxication is a form of psychological and emotional escape. Nothing complicated about that. But this offers a meta-narrative. This is also an escape from the pain of imprisonment. So I asked my colleague, how do you say bong in Spanish? ¿Cómo se dice bong en castellano? And the answer is bong. So when you say this word, bong, to your friends, you are bilingual. Now here we see an image of a seemingly modern cell. And this is setting the stage for greater examination of progress and modernization, because very often in museum studies we see an item or a gallery situated next to a room of the past. So this is an old dungeon-like cell, and it's right next to one that is more modern. So we have this contrast, this juxtaposition, and the way we connect the pre-modern with the modern is to recognize movement of time, progress. And this is underscored by the display of medical equipment, that the Argentine prison system is just as modern as any other prison system. Progress. And here we see in the closing passageway of the Argentine tour, Argentine Prison Museum tour, a Durkheimian reference to the cult of the individual. This is the woman of the prison who visits, who attends to the emotional needs of those who are confined, this sense of compassion. And what the Argentine Prison Museum does not do, however, is make any reference to the last dictatorship. It's completely sanitized at any reference to the last dictatorship and human rights atrocities. I will return to those controversies in other lectures, but let me just leave you with one final reference to our work, drawing attention to Foucault and Durkheim, Michael Welch, Rutgers University, Melissa Macuare, Universidad de los Andes, Venezuela. With that, I'm going to have a glass of wine, and since we're still in Buenos Aires, I'm going to have a Malbec.